This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Halti Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, this is Hal Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Yaniv Sneor of Mid-Atlantic BioAngels. Yaniv, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Great. So what was your background before investing in early stage companies? What did you do before this?
I actually studied physics. I consider myself a reformed physicist. I fell in love with the business world fairly early on in my career. And then after that, I sort of started and grew and ran and turned around and purchased and sold a bunch of companies. I found myself several years later as a consultant. I call myself sometimes an accidental consultant, but I work with both large and small companies. And then at some point, I discovered that many of the small clients that I was working with in the life science sectors, they had a difficult time raising money because it was difficult for them to identify investors who understood the science that they were trying to get involved with. And so that led me to the discussions that eventually formed with two other partners. We started this group called Mid-Atlantic BioAngels, or MABA, and we've decided to concentrate exclusively in investments in the life sciences and specifically sort of in the deep science of the life science, the therapeutics, devices, and diagnostics to sort of fill this market need that we saw for those investors with understanding in the field so they can be connected to those companies.
Great. So what excites you right now? What do you find fascinating?
So I'm always excited about the life science space. It's a very high risk, but very high reward area. But the nice thing is that success means that we change patients' lives for the better if we're successful. And that's always something that, that's a wonderful incentive to have in there. Also, it's an interesting thing because it's a very challenging space. It attracts people who already have a certain sense of maturity, perhaps, and a lot of experience. So both the entrepreneurs that we work with, as well as my colleagues, are really a joy to work with. So I really enjoy that as well.
Very good. So we see a lot of people investing in the life science sector. What's your advice for them? What should they do before they write that first check?
Personally, I would never invest without the benefit of the input from our group. I mean, there are so many different challenges in this sector, whether it's scientific or regulatory or strategic or reimbursement, financial, you name it. It's such a tough sector that I think that having the ability to discuss and due diligence on these opportunities by having a plurality of people and backgrounds and domain expertise, I would never be able to figure it all out on my own. And so especially in an area that is so challenging, I think you really benefit by investing with or alongside a group with some deep domain expertise.
Great. So on the other side of that table, what's your advice for the founder that's starting a new life science company? What would you tell them to do before they launch?
So in the life sciences, because it's such a challenging field, you don't have folks who just jump into it lightly. But often you find scientists who are often very extremely bright and have probably solved a significant challenge scientifically. And sometimes they have the attitude of, if I've already solved something so difficult scientifically, how difficult could the business be? And the realities are that science and business are very different activities and require different skills and personalities. And some of the scientists make the transition very well into the business world, and some of them do not. And so I think it's important for anyone who's trying to make a commercial success from a life science opportunity to really understand what the commercial aspects are required of this company to reach success, and to understand whether this is for them and how best they can find their role and what actually makes them happy. And another thing that I find that a lot of entrepreneurs don't do early on, but I think should do more of, is that first line discovery. There are different market makers and different people that provide opportunities, especially like exits in our field. Talk to them early. Talk to the customers. Talk to the people who are going to be adopters. Talk to the doctors in the field. See what they want. See what will influence them to adopt your technology. And the better understanding you have of that earlier on, the better you'll be able to shape your future efforts and more likely to be successful as well.
That's good advice. Well, let's talk about the state of investing in life science today. The industry is always moving and changing, but how do you see it evolving today, and what changes do you see coming up?
So I think like any other industry, it's cyclical. It has its highs and lows. For us, sometimes there's a lot more money and more available for companies, in which times you see these evaluations of companies going up. Sometimes there are less money available. I don't know, if people realize, that after the 2008 crash, many of the VCs in the life sciences disappeared, the venture capital firms. And only after the IPO market came back for life sciences in 2013 did you begin to see more and more venture capital companies coming in. So now there is a period where we have a lot of money chasing many deals, and it looks like valuations are high. So it may be that we're cresting at some point, and there could be some leaner days ahead. In terms of the sector itself, we see a convergence of devices and diagnostics and healthcare IT and health tech. A lot more data associated with these devices and diagnostics, which is interesting. In terms of individual sectors, disease areas, everything sort of evolves in its own space. It's affected by the science, by the payers in terms of what you can get reimbursement for, by what the large buyers are willing to buy or are looking for. So that's always changing and evolving. And then you have things that are on the horizon. I think that gene therapies and gene editing, you hear a lot about that. I think it's going to play more and more of a role in things moving forward. Companion diagnostics, liquid biopsies. These are things I think we'll be hearing a lot more about in the near future.
Well, very good. So let's talk about the investment thesis you have at your group. What is the angle you take on funding life science deals? What's your criteria, and what is the core thesis you follow?
So we concentrate, as I mentioned, only on the deep science of the life science, specifically therapeutics, devices, diagnostics. We invest all over the world, which used to be very unique for angel groups, but I think a little bit less so. One of the things that we specifically look for is companies that do not require more than approximately $15 or $20 million in total in diluted funding before they can reach an exit. And the reason for that is we have seen in the life sciences and the angel community that you can do multiple syndicated rounds of around $2.5 million, to $5 million each. We've seen companies reach $20 million. In terms of syndication, for people who are not familiar with the term, the reality in the angel community is that we usually, especially in the life sciences, any one group can rarely fill the round completely. So we're very friendly with each other. And if we invested in the company and we're vested in their success, we will happily reach out to other angel groups and say, hey, we've invested in this company. Would you be interested in taking a look at them? And that's sort of a syndicated round. And we've seen those rounds reach about $20 million. I mean, multiple syndicated rounds reach maybe $20 million or so. And we look to invest in those angel-only deals. We believe that once you need more than $20 million, when you're in the 30, 50, or $100 million, it's really a different realm. It's more for VCs, and we try to make sure to stay away from that. In terms of other things, devices diagnostics are going to need to see traction before they exit. But in terms of other important things that we're looking for, management is always the number one criteria for investment for us. We have to trust that these folks know the road ahead, and we trust that we can trust them with our money, and that they'll pivot if they need to. The second thing we're looking for is a technology that will change the standard of care. It won't just be incremental. And the last thing we're looking for is that it's a large and growing market, because otherwise it wouldn't support a significant exit. We as a group invest as individuals. We've formed internal pools where we invest together based on our votes. And we also have created a sidecar fund to people to co-invest with us for those who don't have the time or the expertise to be active members of the group.
And can you talk about one or two portfolios, for example, that fit that thesis that's worked well?
So majority of our investments, about 60% of them, are in the therapeutics area. We have one device company that we invested in many years ago that is now getting close to an exit, where it's changing the standard of care, where the human data that they already have is wonderful. Every physician that is trying this technology during clinical trials wants to invest in the company. So the feedback is wonderful about them. I can't mention their names specifically yet, because they're doing very well, and hopefully there'll be an exit there as well very soon. There's a variety of companies that we are working with very strong CEOs that we hope will have exits in the near future.
Well, very good. So let's talk about the challenges for the startup and the investor in this space. For the startup, what do you think the primary challenges they have in running their company? Is it regulatory? Is it the market? Is it technology? Where do you see them spending time?
It's all of the above, really. It's a really, really challenging environment. I mean, the payers are the market makers here, right? So whether there's reimbursement for specific technology will create either demand or there won't be demand here. So it's a very important thing. Also, the pharma and device companies, these companies are the ones that provide the exit for all of the companies that we invest in. And their interests change on a regular basis, and we have to keep up with that. The science, on the one hand, we have a great hypothesis on paper, but doesn't always bear out in the marketplace. And then we have issues such as models. For instance, in cancer, we cure a lot of mice, but we don't necessarily cure the people with those same type of medications. So we have many disease models that either don't have good models or don't have any models at all. And then you have a regulatory process that could be very expensive, can take a long time. Sometimes it's more predictable than others. And then you have the cost. You hear all these things about companies running up clinical trials and getting to a phase 3 trial after spending billions and billions of dollars, and there's a failure. People are talking about $400 million to run an Alzheimer's clinical trial. That's an enormous number and daunting. And then you add to that the usual challenges of finding, retaining, and motivating quality employees. And on top of that, the majority of biotechs will never sell a product, which means all the money that they need to survive, they have to raise. And to do that while they're performing very extensive and expensive research. So there's a lot of challenges involved in this field.
So on the other side of that table, the investor, what are the challenges they face? Of course, they're trying to assess and understand this space as well, but where do you see them spending their time?
So I think it's difficult to assess and understand all the different components that go into an investment in this field. You add that to the fact that these companies are going to require more money than a quote unquote standard investment or regular tech investment. And on top of that, it's going to take longer for these exits to materialize. So tech investments could take less than 5 years or less than 3 years to materialize. We are expecting a 5 to 7 year window. So you have to be patient, you have to be knowledgeable, and you have to be willing and expecting to invest multiple rounds and bigger check sizes.
So you see a lot of applications and subsectors in these spaces out there. If you had to call out one or two that were good immediate opportunities for investors to pursue, what would you put at the top of the list?
It's hard to do that. We don't distinguish between the therapeutic devices and diagnostics. We open ourselves up to that, and then if they meet the criteria, we look at each one of them based on the criteria. Again, if the management is there, if we think it'll change the standard of care, then and the market obviously is big enough, we'll go into it. But it's really on a case-by-case basis. I wouldn't do it a carte blanche in terms of, we'll invest in CAR-T or whatever it is. We do try to shy away from markets that become very crowded. So because once a market is very crowded, it's difficult to own intellectual property, real estate there. And then you're competing for mind share, et cetera. It just becomes a very difficult opportunity.
Well, very good. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
Maybe it would be helpful for your listeners to put some numbers, so to put things in perspective. So obviously, historically, we invest 60% of our investments in therapeutics, 30% in devices, 10% in diagnostics. From a funnel perspective, from a yield perspective, of every 100 applications that we receive, we actually only invite 24 of those companies to present to the group. We say no to 76 of those companies in the beginning. We tell them why not, just in case they can come back in the future. But of those 24 that present to us in person, maybe 16 will move on to due diligence. And of those 16, maybe 2 or 3 will receive funding. So 2 out of 100 is the yield that we're working with. So, and it's pretty much on par with other professional investment groups, such as VCs or other angel investment groups that invest professionally in this area or in any area.
Very good. So how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
So as angel investors, we all have at least one day job. I have two. So we ask companies to go to our website to look at our investment criteria. Our website is bioangels.net. Under the Entrepreneurs tab, we have our investment criteria in the application. If a company thinks that they're a match, by all means, please submit an application to us. Our screening committee gets together once a month, get back to every company. And the best way to reach us is usually by go to our website and send the applications or send us an email at info@bioangels.net.
Very good. We'll put those in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Halti Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.